Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Acosta, thank you for your willingness to serve. Good to see you again. Just to follow up on Senator Warren's line of questioning, point of clarification. During this pending review in which you've been charged to look at all regulations, determine which ones are appropriate according to your standards and the President's standards, you still have an obligation to enforce existing regulations. So the silica rule, for instance, will be enforced by your department pending this review.
Senator, we would enforce all rules that are in effect pending that review, yes.
Including the silica rule?
I believe, I'm hesitating only because of one item that I don't remember. To the extent it is in effect, I know it was promulgated. Assuming there is no stay, then yes.
Okay. Second, to follow up on Senator Baldwin's questioning regarding funding, I get a little worried when I hear you talk about accepting a lower level of funding for job training. The President's budget has winners and losers, right? There's a lot more money for defense, there's money for a wall, and that comes at the expense of other programs. And I think we would hope that you would be an advocate for the programs that the Department of Labor funds. And in Connecticut, for example, the plus up in defense dollars doesn't do us the maximum amount of good without the Department of Labor dollars. So we can build additional submarines at Electric Boat, but if we don't have the workforce pipeline necessary to staff the supply chain, those jobs will go overseas. At the Eastern Connecticut manufacturing pipeline, it's not about mismatched resources. It's simply about not having enough resources. We have a 92% placement rate in manufacturing jobs from the pipeline program. 3,000 people are trying to sign up, and they can only take a couple hundred a year. And the consequence of not fulfilling that need is that the jobs will just go to other countries because we can't hire the folks here. So let me ask you Senator Baldwin's question in a little different way. Do you support the 20% cut that's been proposed to your department?
So, Senator, thank you for rephrasing, because I never said that I accepted when I was speaking, or I don't recall saying I accepted when I was speaking with Senator Baldwin. I wrote myself a note when the budget, the skinny budget came out, and it was a quote from the OMB director. And he said, to paraphrase, we've got 20 trillion in debt. And so it's not enough that a program sounds good. A program has to be shown to be good. And I wrote myself that note because if confirmed as Secretary of Labor, one of the things that I want to do, and I forget which of your colleagues had great data, but I want to go through these programs and compile the data because for a lot of these programs, I believe the rate of return on taxpayer, an investment of taxpayer dollar is quite significant and would pay for itself very readily in money saved and taxes paid by the fact that individuals have jobs. And so I readily embrace that as part of the job, and if confirmed, I'm certainly going to speak up and present all that information and advocate.
I think you'll find an abundance of programs that are underfunded that will allow you to make that case. Lastly, I appreciate the number of times in which you've made references to the intersection between the Department of Education and the Department of Labor. The fact of the matter is, as Senator Alexander pointed out, most of the workforce training in this country is funded by the Department of Education. You and I had the chance to talk in my office about the migration of public dollars away from not-for-profit education to for-profit education. And really, the stunning lack of results we're getting from for-profit job training programs. 1/3 of for-profit graduates are today making less than a minimum wage over the course of a year. 12% of students are attending for-profit schools, but 36% of students who have loan defaults today come from those for-profit schools. I know you've thought about this in the context of your work in graduate education in Florida. Shouldn't there be a role for the federal government to ask more of all centers of job training, not just the ones you fund, but of colleges as well, and demand results that we're not getting today from a lot of these for-profit operations?
Well, Senator, I have thought of it in the context of law, and in law schools, the accrediting agencies are looking more for results. It's less about the input and more about the output. What is the bar passage rate? What is the job rate? And what you are seeing is that some of the for-profit law schools are facing challenges and have faced challenges with the Department of Education because they haven't, because the results are not necessarily on par. And so to the extent that these are, well, I don't want to go beyond, to the extent that these are Department of Labor programs, I certainly would want to see the results and the metrics to make sure that, that it is being done appropriately.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks.